know, I got the rest of the speech, but I said the title. My name is Daniel Martin. I'm the co-artistic producer of the rEvolver Theatre Festival, and I'd like to thank you all for coming out tonight. I also have the hiccups. maybe hiccuping during the speech, and a cough. So it could get disastrous at some point. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that the rEvolver Festival and all of Up in the Air Theatre's activities. Come on through. Everybody look at them. Thank you for working very hard to get here. Yes, so we'd like to acknowledge that the rEvolver Festival and all of our activities take place on the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh peoples. At Up in the Air Theatre, we are hopeful and dedicated to trying to build a better future on these lands through our work with emerging storytellers, and the one that has existed in the past. We understand that this involves failing, learning from your failure, trying again, and being willing to constantly learn and try to improve. And we are dedicated to doing that. Hope you'll join us.
You know, the way that we do it is that we always do it verbally in front of the audience because we think it's important that there's actually that verbal connection to the land and to the people who are there to see the show. And we'll always be the person who is the in-charge presenter or producer that's there that day so that they actually see us and we can interact with them.
Yeah, we feel it's important that it's done by a member of our company and not by an usher or a front of house manager.
Although this year we're looking at potentially having the artists do their own acknowledgements, and we're just talking to some local Indigenous artists and leaders that we know just to find out how appropriate that is in this region. So that's something we're working on, but we don't know if that's going to be the case until we've gone through the workshop and spoken to the right people about that.
So the way that we do our acknowledgement, we're late adopters, I guess, of a lot of things. We move slowly on purpose because we like to understand things before we do them. So when the acknowledgements started happening, we didn't start doing them immediately. We sort of sat around and went, what is this? How do we understand it? And we sought out friends that we have who are Indigenous artists and activists and sat down with them and talked about what the acknowledgement was and what its meaning was until we felt that we were comfortable doing it in the knowledge of what we were doing rather than just jumping onto it because it was what everybody else is doing.
We recognized this strange thing that was happening out here on the West Coast. There was like this big pause. They would do the acknowledgement, and then a white settler would kind of be like, and then what? And we didn't really appreciate that. Like, we didn't understand that. Like, why should we be in this position? What are we doing, and why are we doing it? That was more important to us than anything else. So once we found out why, then we actually began to create a scripted, very, very structured acknowledgement that spoke to what we were doing and spoke to the protocol of the land. And we continued with that acknowledgement for a few years.
And then so when we do the festival every year, there's like 70 or 80 performances, and so maybe there's 3 of us doing acknowledgements, so we'll be doing 20 to 30 each. And what happened, we felt with the scripted acknowledgement, is that it started to become sort of pat and repetitive later in the festival. And to get away from that, last year we moved away from having the acknowledgement be tightly scripted, and we created just a point form guide. And we decided to try committing to connecting with what we were saying and doing the acknowledgement extemporaneously every time, feeling that trying to be really connected to the meaning of what we were saying was what was really important. And so sometimes we mess up or we miss things, and sometimes, you know, we lose track in the middle, but it's because we're trying really hard to make it meaningful.
But what was, I think, really important about the new one was this. Dan identified this thing, which is that we had to accept our position as those who would fail and then learn, and And that was a big learning point for us last year. So we owe Dan that. Thank you for figuring that one out, because that was really the core of it. We know what it is. We're trying to understand. We're going to continue to learn. We're going to fail. We're going to succeed. It's not just about the land. It's about us and where we stand on it and how we honor the protocol of these lands. So I think that was it for us.